Hi all, it's Tom the taxi driver, and in this video I'm going to be talking about why no one has an advantage on the knowledge. So I believe that no one has an advantage on the knowledge. What do I mean by that? I had someone message me the other day and they said, well, I've got an advantage. I'm thinking about starting the knowledge. I'm doing my blue books, but my dad is a cab driver. So I've got a bit of advantage there. And I didn't want to shoot this lad down. And apologies if he's watching this video. But what I meant by it is that I don't really believe anyone has an advantage on the knowledge because it is your knowledge. You still have to go and do the work. I get what he meant. You know, his dad's a cab driver. He can ask him for advice. How do I point this? Can I do a left turn, right turn here? But on the most part, sometimes cab drivers aren't the best people to ask because, they've done their knowledge a long time ago. Even if I drive to areas, say Stratford, Stratford Broadway is two-way now. And it's only because I was having some work done on the cab most recently that I got to go and see that two-way in action. But I couldn't call round there anymore. So when you're on the knowledge, you really are the freshest because you have to go and see these places for yourself. And I think every cab driver who's out there now, unless you're fully engrossed and learning all the streets very, very regularly, these faraway places, Sydenham, South London, I haven't been there in the cab since driving in the cab. My knowledge there is probably non-existent now. It's a very bad truth to sort of admit. But unless you are in those areas every day, you don't reinforce your knowledge and your brain is naturally just going to let go of those sorts of things. In terms of an advantage, having cab drivers as friends or family, it can be sort of beneficial for the quick off-the-fly stuff. Is this point here? Is that there? But generally, you've got to go out and you've got to do the work. So that's why I believe you don't have the advantage there of having a cab driver there. Same goes for living in London. Some people go, "Oh, the knowledge must be so easy if you live in London." I don't really think it is an advantage because ultimately when you are sitting your appearances, you have to do it inside of a room in front of an examiner. And the only thing you have as your advantage is what's inside your head. It doesn't matter if you've lived in London, grown up in London, worked in London. You have to rely upon your memory for that. And I think, and in my personal instance as well, I didn't grow up in London. I not only had limited exposure of working in London, is that because my brain was a blank canvas for London, my first exposure for learning the geography of London, other than odd cycle rides and things like that, was actually the knowledge. So I got the map out and done my runs and had to learn it by the map. So I didn't have any pre-existing notion of what London looked like. If you've lived here, and you know how to get to the shops, how to get to your friends on the other side of town, you might have already been a bit lazy and you pick out shortcuts and quick ways of going places because, when you drive, it's different to the map. But the great thing with the knowledge is that the knowledge is all based upon your interpretation of the map, not how you drive it, it's the map. So I think if you've already lived in London, you might be at a slight disadvantage because you've already learned ways of driving that you wouldn't necessarily do on the map. So that's another disadvantage. That no one has an advantage when they do the knowledge. And the other one is having a good memory. Lots of people will say, oh yes, I'm at a very, very good advantage because I have a good memory. I can remember everything. That's all fine and good, but when you go to an appearance, you have to demonstrate that memory. So you have to be able to enunciate it. You have to speak it and convince the examiner of that knowledge. It's all well and good if it's up here. No one can see inside your head though. So I would arguably say that even having a good memory isn't an advantage. Yes, you need some level of memory to be able to remember the roads, but in terms of the exam situation, it doesn't necessarily get you more brownie points. You could learn the entire A to Z, 25,000 points, all the roads, literal intricate cul-de-sacs, but if you don't demonstrate it, if you can't get it out, it's arguably not an advantage. So if there is an advantage on the knowledge, I'd say it's probably going to be the most coolest, calmest, collected person. Being able to put yourself in a moment of a stressful situation, you know, your heart rate elevates, being able to calm yourself down, think clearly, see clearly, and deliver very, very clearly. That's probably the only advantage I think you could have on the knowledge. Everything else, be wary of it, take it with a pinch of salt. The analogy I'm going to compare it to, it's like running a marathon. You might have a friend who said, Tom, I ran a marathon a couple of years ago. What you got to do is this, this, and this. You can take some of their advice, but they're not going to run that marathon for you. You have got to run that marathon. And that for me is what the knowledge is like. Thank you very much for watching this video. They should have some more videos coming up along the bottom here. And subscribe if you found these videos useful. I'll see you again soon.